If you're selling or buying a home or just keeping an eye on the Reno-Sparks real estate market, this is the video you need to watch. The market has shifted and the numbers don't lie. As a matter of fact, one stat is up over 1,000% compared to last year. So don't get caught off guard. Stay tuned for some eye-opening charts, some surprising trends, and what it all means for you. Let's go.
Assist you sell way smarter.
Welcome back to the July 2025 Reno-Sparks Real Estate Market Update Show. Excited to have you. A couple of things before we dive into this great content. Number one, this is for the Reno-Sparks area only and includes single-family homes. Basically houses, townhomes, and condos. Does not include lots of land, commercial, multifamily, any of that stuff. Let's talk about the charts real quick on how they're laid out. The data point we're going to be discussing is right here in the yellow box. Over here is going to be compared to June. Now, I did mention this as July update, but as I record this, it's early July, so we have stats through the end of June. So we're going to compare that apples to apples, June of 2024, and of course the difference is going to be in between. And of course, one last thing before we move on, if you could do me a favor and smash that like button down there, maybe hit the notification bell. It really does help us out to continue to provide this great content for you free of charge. First chart we usually dive into is mortgage rates. On the left side of this chart, you can see the mortgage rate. On the bottom are the dates, and we usually go back a full decade on these charts. So right now we're sitting at 6.8% interest rates, which is down slightly from 6.9% last year. Down 1.4%. What I want you to notice here is this channel that's forming here. We're kind of stuck in this 6 to 7 range on interest rates, and I don't expect that to change much before the end of the year. Maybe the end of 2025 here coming up, or into early 2026, depending on the economy and a number of other factors, you could see interest rates ease a bit, but I wouldn't expect a whole lot of movement. Let's talk about the chart that gets the most attention, and that is the median price here in the Reno-Sparks area. Now, to be clear, this is Reno-Sparks combined. Now, Reno might be a little bit higher. Sparks is probably a bit lower, but I wanted to give you the entire area. And right now, we're sitting at $573,000, which is up 4.2% from last year, where it was at $550,000 even. But one thing I do want to point out, that channel again, and you can see the channel. Now, why does all this matter in interest rates and median home price? Well, mortgage payments. And right now you can see the average mortgage payment right now in the Reno-Sparks area is $4,296, which is up 3.3% from this time last year. It was $4,158. Home affordability, well, when you're looking at this chart, you got to look at this number 51 as a percentage. And that's the percentage a median income earner can afford of the median priced home. In other words, that median price we saw over here of $573,000, well, based on current interest rates and prices, the average income earner could afford 51%, just over 50% of the median price. Where you'd like to see this number for a really good, strong, stable market is more like 80 to 90% and above. And as you can see, we were there back in 2015 all the way through the pandemic. And then when we saw interest rates rise significantly, that's when we saw affordability drop. Now let's dive into some actual Reno-Sparks content, and let's talk about new listings. Now these are listings that just came on the market in June. So people put up their hand or said, hey, I want to put my home on the market. Let's get it up for sale. In June, there were 726. That's up 4.3%, where we had 696 back in June of 2024. So basically flat, up slightly, but not all that much. Now let's look at new listings by price. Now on the left side of the screen, you'll see the number of listings. On the bottom, we have price ranges. So we have 100 to 200, 2 to 300,000, 3 to 400,000, 4 to 5, 5 to 6, 6 to 7, and so on. So these are all broken down by price range. And then of course you get to 750 to a million, $1.5 million, and $1.5 million plus. So it's interesting to see the different price range. You can see the majority of new listings are coming on the market between 4 and say 650, 700,000. Now let's look at active. This is where things get very interesting because remember the new listings, these are just people in June. Now the active listings are the total listings. They could have been homes listed back in February, March, April, May, but these are the actual homes on the market. So if you're thinking about selling, these are the people you're competing with. If you're thinking about buying, these are homes you could go out there and take a look at and potentially buy today. 1,510, which is up 48%, just shy of 50%. We only had 1,020 last year. And what's interesting about this chart is you can look at a more normalized market back in 2015, 16, 17, 18. Now, let's look at active by price. And this is where things get interesting once again. Now, you certainly have all these active where you'd expect, but look at the number of active listings up here in the upper end price range. I'm talking 750 to a million to $1.5 million, and $1.5 million plus. Quite a few listings up here, almost as much in some of these price ranges as you see in the mid-level price ranges. Now let's shift over to sold listings, the number of sales. 494, which is up not even 1% from last year. 4 total sales from last year at 490. So very little movement in terms of total sales volume, basically flat. Let's look at closed by price. Now, the reason I wanted to show you active by price and pay attention to this part of the chart is let's look at closed by price. You can see very few closed, but we still have quite a few actives, and the gap is starting to grow between the number of active and the number that are selling on a monthly basis. So this is something to keep an eye on. Most of your sales are taking place between the 4 and 600, 650 range, which does make sense given that's our median price range. Where this becomes an issue is when you look at active listings and you look at total sales. So closed sales, again, flat. Look how low the sales numbers are. You'd love to see these sales numbers get closer, especially at the peak, to at least 650, 700 and above this time of year, and we're just not there. So sales are flat, but active listings are way up. So as you get more and more listings and sales stay flat, becomes more competition that generally puts pressure on prices to at least stay the same and potentially drop. Now let's look at that chart that I teased you with early on, and that's the 1,000% higher than last year. And this is unsold listings, up 1,000%. We only had 11 last year, we had 121. So not huge numbers here, but it still is 1,000%. And what I find interesting, if you go back and look at this chart, January peak of listings, January you have peak unsold listings, January, on and on. So you can see a trend here. Normally unsold listings go in January, and it makes sense if you think about it because, November, December into January are slow, holidays, wintertime, all that stuff. So you'd expect January to be the peak. And it actually was true back here, 6 months ago in January of 2025, we had a peak of unsold listings. That's why it's so rare and unique to see a peak of unsold listings happen in July, in the middle of, these are actually through June, not even July. This is the end of June, which is typically one of the hottest times of the year in terms of sales and listings and so on. To see that many unsold listings is something to keep an eye on. Now, what does all this mean for you? If you're selling a home, it means that you need to be more aggressive and pay attention to the marketplace. The days of, and we saw from the charts, right? The days of, hey, my neighbor sold for this, I want to go much higher than that. Those days are gone because prices really haven't gone anywhere in the last few years. So you need to be conscious of the marketplace, of prices, and you need to be aggressive on your pricing and understand there's just more competition out there. There's more for buyers to choose from. Now on the buyer side of things, it's very good news because you have more to choose from. As I just mentioned, there's more houses to choose from. Interest rates are remaining stable and will hopefully start to come down towards the end of the year. But now is the time to potentially get great value. You have multiple options. You maybe don't have to be as rushed as you once were and just choose the first house you see. You have some options. But rest assured, if you need any help with any of this, especially selling your home, give us this to sell a call. Contact us today. We'll sell your home for only $49.95, which is significantly less than what you'd expect to pay from some of those full-priced real estate agents out there. And speaking of valuations and trends and what's going on with your particular home, click that Find Out Now button there, and we'll give you a free, no obligation home valuation. It's automated, but we'll also follow it up with what's called the CMA, a comparative market analysis, and give you all the information you need. So even if you're buying a house, it's a great tool to use. You want to make sure you're not overpaying for that. Don't hesitate to reach out. 775-688-6060, info@4renohomes.com. We look forward to hearing from you real soon. We'll see you next time right here on the Reno-Sparks Real Estate Market Update Show. Bye-bye.
Assist you sell way smarter.